And you mentioned Newton having this study 500 years ago.
Right.
This has evolved over time. This isn't something that one day we just woke up and you started thinking
Right.
these concepts. But who have you seen in your research that has really been heavily studying this and kind of how it's progressed over the thousands of years to today?
It's a great question, because if we think about ourselves where we are, we think we're so technologically advanced and such an established culture. But we've, again, only been around. I mean, they consider us Western culture as having begun at the time of Isaac Newton, because he was able to build such a foundational understanding of the way things operated. And from that, all sciences emerged, at least Western science and Western culture is concerned. And he got his information and he got his understandings from these Hermetic principles. There's a book called the Emerald Tablet that he had discovered. It was something that dated back. And when he found it, he translated it. I'm not sure if it was translated from Greek into English or from Latin into English, but he translated these texts. And by translating these texts in the Emerald Tablet, he was able to actually even come up with the ideas, his 3 laws, third law of motion, first, second, third law, because each one of those laws operates according to one of those 7 principles. So without these 7 principles that are foundational principles dating back to the deepest parts of antiquity, then he would not have been able to come up with these 3 laws. The law of inertia, I think it's a cause and effect, for example. For every cause there is an effect. And the law of, an object at rest stays at rest. I mean, when you think of the object at rest staying at rest, then it's the same thing as being nothing coming from nothing. If you've got an object at rest and it will stay at rest, then you've got nothing, and what comes next after nothing is nothing. But when you've got an object in motion, it stays in motion, then you've got from something comes something subsimilar. And if you can really break that, parse that out to the lowest, to the tiniest, most minute level, then you've got at least 2 instances. You've got the first instance where you have nothing. The second instance is where you have something. Of course, time is between the 2. And then the third instance is when you have something subsimilar. And everything operates according to that. Everything from the standpoint of the Big Bang, where you had nothing in the beginning, and then you had something subsimilar, or even the generation of cells into consciousness, where you had a stimuli occurring to an object or to a life form, and that stimuli occurring over and over and over again. But yet that object or that life form had what's called an eligibility of growth, which means it was able to recognize that stimuli. And once it was able to recognize that stimuli, then numerous stimuli, groups and groups of stimuli built up over and over and over again. And that buildup of those stimuli over and over again led from what's called a precept, or the cause and effect, the stimuli being recognized, to a precept, or an image of those causes and those effects. And when you layer images over images, and you have the ganglia, which is a part of the brain, the most primitive part, expanding and expanding and expanding, then there's another change that occurs. But again, all that becomes from nothing, transitioning an instance later into something, and then an instance later into something subsimilar. No matter how far you parse it down, that's always going to be effect of the creation process.